Hey guys, DC Multiverse dude here. So this is going to be a really cool video, but please watch to the end because we've got an awesome competition going on for subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, then watch to the end of this video and find out how you can win a $100 gift card to Fet's Hard Out Toys and Collectibles. Anyway, hope you enjoy. Yeah, so guys, I did a thing. Okay, so look, I'm not going to turn this channel into a Marvel Legends channel, but what happened is this. I really love the X-Men, and I saw that the new animated series X-Men 97 is getting a Marvel Legends wave. Yeah, they look awesome, and I saw them at Fet's Hard Out Toys and Collectibles on pre-order, so on impulse I just pre-ordered the whole wave. Because yeah, I really love the X-Men. Gotta have them. And what that's kind of sparked inside me now is a mission to collect the full team of X-Men and the full Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So here's sort of the beginning of that endeavor. Lots of stuff on order. You'll see I've picked up just a few items. I've got the Scarlet Witch in her classic retro West Coast Avengers look, the Colossus and Juggernaut 2-pack, and the Sabretooth from Age of Apocalypse, which isn't my favorite Sabretooth, but it's the one that I could get. Got plenty more on order as well. So I started getting these and I thought, you know what? These figures are really interesting, especially when you compare them to DC Multiverse, which are the figures that I'm very familiar with and I'm still into hardcore collecting. And I realized that there are some major differences and similarities between the figures, and I thought this is probably a fun time just to record my thoughts as a newbie to Marvel Legends about what differentiates the two lines, where are their strengths, where are their weaknesses, and do a little head-to-head. This is sort of not a serious competition to try and establish definitively which is objectively the best line. I'm not interested in that. It's just one guy's opinion. I'm sort of not here to go into bat for DC Multiverse because that's my preferred line. I just sort of want to give an even-handed look based on my first-hand impressions. So that's what this is, and I thought it'd be a bit of fun. So I thought the way to do this, and this is non-scientific of course, would just be to get the Marvel Legends figures that I had and find the equivalent DC Multiverse figures in the line that sort of match up in terms of size, scale, weight, height, to try and make it a reasonable comparison. Now, another reason why I thought this would be an apt comparison is because these figures are roughly in the same price bracket. Now, I know that Marvel Legends are probably a little bit more expensive than DC Multiverse on average, but they're in the same ballpark as compared to something like a MAFX or a Mezco 112. So please don't come at me telling me that the MAFX is better than both of these lines, because yeah, I know that it's a different price range. It might as well be a completely different product to me. These are the consumer grade lines that are made for collectors, but at that more appropriate price point or affordable price point, hence the comparison. And so here we go. You'll see we've got the lightweight category. I've got Raven and Scarlet Witch. Colossus and Hush Batman are sort of the intermediate large figure. And you've got Juggernaut and Bane, who I suppose are the equivalent sort of deluxe or mega figures. And so another thing to note is that I'm aware that these lines are at different stages of their lifeline in terms of the maturity of the line. So I know Marvel Legends has been around for much longer than the McFARLANE DC Multiverse line. They've worked out a lot of growing pains that McFARLANE maybe hasn't yet or are still working through. These figures are all from different time periods. So I know Juggernaut and Colossus are quite a few years old now. Scarlet Witch is probably a year old. It's all a bit arbitrary, but it's just meant for a bit of fun. So, without any further ado, let's get the comparison underway. Let's start with the big boys, Bane and Juggernaut, because I think these are kind of some of the most fun you can have with either line. They're the showstoppers, the big pieces. They look great on a shelf. They're imposing. The two characters are actually quite similar in their sort of presence and personas. So I thought this would be a really fun place to start. Immediately what strikes me when I look at these two, just from an aesthetic point of view, is the McFARLANE figures have a much more, they go for a more realistic style in general. Now that's not always the case, but in this particular comparison, Bane has kind of got a more detailed look to him. You'll see there's a lot of attention paid to buckles and straps and lines and textures. whereas Juggernaut here and a lot of the Marvel Legends figures have a more comic book look, and it's a more toyetic look. And by that I mean it's clearly these are designed to be like toys, which is not a bad thing. It's not a value judgment. It's just a different aesthetic. So Juggernaut, while having an awesome sort of detailed face sculpt and some really nice sculpt work here, he overall is not trying to hide the fact that he's sort of a toy. You know, Marvel Legends is not afraid to have these big seams where there's sort of the torso, crunch. They're not afraid to have the thigh cut here, this big obvious thigh cut. You know, it's just, they're not afraid of it. They embrace the fact that they are toys, and, you know, in favor of, a more comic book look and articulation, which I think is a valid approach. You look at McFarlane and, there's no real ab crunch because that would break up the sculpt. And that's what McFarlane prioritizes, I think, is the sculpt. And you can see it's just packed with detail, the laces, the texture on the suit, the veins in the arms. I mean, Juggernaut's got some veins, but they're quite modest. You know, this mottled skin texture, the texture on his mask here, whereas, Juggernaut's got nothing going on. And it's, again, not a value judgment. It's just an interesting comparison and a difference in the way that these two companies approach their figures. I think one thing I'll say for the Marvel Legends is almost without fail, their head sculpts are terrific. They've really nailed head sculpts. I think DC Multiverse, McFarlane can be a little bit hit and miss on the head sculpt, but we'll get to that. But in general, aesthetically, I think it has to be really a draw, especially for the heavyweight class, because Juggernaut really looks like he does in the comics, and so does Bane. And it's two different types of comic book inspiration, I guess. One is more realistic and one is more cartoony, and I think they're both perfectly valid. In terms of the feel of the characters, this is another big difference. I found that Marvel Legends, because of their increased emphasis on articulation, everything a little bit looser, for good and for ill. So everything kind of wobbles, everything kind of jiggles. In the hand, things just feel a little bit loosey-goosey, maybe a little bit, I don't want to say cheaper, but the plastic feels a bit hollow. I don't know if you can hear that. McFarlane, on the other hand, I mean, this is like rock solid. You can't do much with it, which is what people will say. Like, he sacrifices articulation in the name of solidity and sculpt, but, he just feels heavier. Yeah, I mean, the Bane is definitely heavier in the hand. The plastic feels firmer and harder. This feels like that kind of glossier, cheaper plastic. I actually think it looks really good, but I think in hand, McFarlane figures just, especially for this type of figure, just feel better. So in terms of feel and fun factor, it's a tough one. Bane feels good in the hand. Colossus is definitely like easier to pose, easier to manipulate his limbs. So, fun factor, you'd give it to Juggernaut. If I keep saying Colossus, forgive me. Fun factor is definitely for Juggernaut, but for sort of feel in your hand, like just like I've just paid a lot of money for something, how good does it feel? I think that the Bane mega figure feels more premium in this case. So, that's an interesting distinction. In terms of accessories though, like this is where, McFarlane really comes unstuck. So Bane came with absolutely nothing, whereas Juggernaut came with, you see, head sculpt, alternative helmet sculpt. He came with an additional set of hands, an alternate head sculpt. So, Marvel Legends definitely seems to have the leg up on accessories. There's no comparison whatsoever. Anyway, that's sort of where I wanted to get to with these two, which is, you can't go wrong with either of them. They're definitely both great. In my opinion, for something you're just going to stand on the shelf, I think Bane definitely takes it. But Juggernaut is still an awesome looking figure in his own right. And if you want to play with something and really do some fun poses and displays and, play with head sculpts and what have you, I think, Juggernaut and the Marvel Legends line really takes it for sort of fun factor versus displayability. So your mileage may vary. Next, I thought I'd look at sort of an intermediate or regular sized figure, comparing the Colossus from the Juggernaut Colossus 2-pack with the Batman Hush. This is actually in many ways an artificial comparison because this Batman here is sort of the standard 7-inch size, although he's on the larger size for a DC Multiverse figure. Colossus is also actually on the much larger side for a Marvel Legends figure. He's about 7 inches tall. Most Marvel Legends are 6 inches tall. So probably not the most natural comparison, because if you're comparing standard versus standard, he'd probably be a bit smaller. But I think it still works because you can kind of see when they're in almost the exact same scale here, 7 inches, how they sort of differ from each other. First thing off the bat is, in this case, I think Batman Hush has an amazing head sculpt. Colossus also has an amazing head sculpt. So for once, McFarlane actually delivers on the head sculpt, matches up to what Marvel Legends can deliver. The second thing that grabs me is look how much more paint there is on the Marvel Legends. So much more paint here on the torso. All that awesome looking silver is actually silver paint. You compare that to something like the DC Multiverse Captain Atom that I reviewed recently that was cast in silver plastic and it did not look that great. Colossus looks amazing. Beautiful silver paint everywhere. Cannot fault it. That's what Captain Atom should have looked like. All the paintwork around the boots, around the belt, the head, the hair, gorgeous paint job. Batman is mostly cast in grey plastic and blue plastic. You know, there's some nice paint on the belt, and the face painting on the head sculpt is actually really good. But there's just overall less paint on McFarlane figures, and they seem to emphasize the sculpt more. Although in this case, you'll see that Colossus actually has a really, really nice detailed sculpt. Some really nice sort of stitching there, not stitching, some wrinkles around the pectorals, and obviously that awesome Colossus sort of metallic sculpt work around there. So they both look great. I think in terms of aesthetics, you know, I think it's, again, a dead heat. You know, they both look pretty spectacular. In terms of feel, so Hush is actually not one of my favorite bucks. I think it looks great just standing on display, but like, you see Batman's neck is just on this massive piece, so that's the only articulation you get. The diaper prevents him from sort of kicking up too much. The joints feel very stiff, and the cape sort of weighs him down. So there's not a whole lot you can do with this Batman in terms of posability. He's not one of the more fun figures in the line. He gets the job done. That's when you can get him to stand up and sort of offset the weight of that cape, and you'll see he's about to fall over. Colossus, on the other hand, you know, extremely, extremely posable. You'll see McFarlane favours the diaper. Marvel Legends does the crotch cut here. I think, again, it's just McFarlane prioritising the sculpt and the look over the sort of playability and posability. It's a different philosophy. I don't know which I prefer. I think because my figures are mostly just going to sit on a shelf, I prefer the McFarlane approach because it just looks, I think, more like a statue versus this, which clearly, again, has a more toyetic look. Another thing to note in terms of the feel in hand is these Marvel Legends figures just feel so loosey-goosey. Look at this. He just wobbles at the torso. Like, that's not a big deal, but it just means that when you pick it up and put it in your hand, it just feels cheaper. Like, because everything jingle jangles, it just doesn't feel as expensive, I guess. And they are expensive. And again, in terms of weight, I think the Multiverse is heavier. The plastic feels harder and higher quality. Even if it's not, it just feels higher quality. So there's sort of a hollowness, a lightness, a jiggliness to the Marvel Legends, which I've noticed, which I'm not sure if that's pervasive across the line, but certainly the ones I've got, they just don't feel as premium in hand, which is really interesting. Finally, in terms of accessories, Hush came with a Batarang and a trading card and a display stand. Colossus in the 2-pack came with a set of hands. So in this particular case, it's kind of a wash because Colossus came with Juggernaut, who had heaps of good alternate head sculpts and other bits and pieces. But in general, you know, I think I appreciate McFarlane including the display stand. On the other hand, Colossus has no trouble standing on his own, unlike Batman. And the trading card is pretty much a non-entity, so I don't factor that into the consideration. So in terms of what they come with, in this case, I think probably Marvel Legends takes it. I'd rather an alternate set of hands than a display stand or a card or a Batarang. So yeah, in this case, it's a wash, right? It's pretty dead heat as far as I'm concerned. Finally, we sort of have the featherweight or lightweight division, and here we have the Scarlet Witch in her retro West Coast Avengers outfit and Raven from the Titans Build-A-Figure wave. So the reason I chose these two figures is because they're quite similar in terms of their theme and concept. They're both sort of magic wielders. They're both female figures using a more slender body buck. And I thought this was just a really interesting comparison because you can kind of see the difference between 6-inch and 7-inch scale. you know, I'm a big fan of the 7-inch scale personally, but I know that many people are dearly devoted to 6 inches. I just think that the 7 inches just obviously look bigger and better on display. They're just flashier and larger and more prominent. So that's my preference. In terms of these two figures, what jumps out at me right away is they both look awesome. From an aesthetic point of view, I think it's a wash. I think they both have like really classic looks here. Great use of color. Really can't fault them at all. What I will say though, this Scarlet Witch just has an amazing head and hair sculpt. Like, I think she looks incredible. And it's, you know, this is the sort of quality head sculpt that I think I can expect from Marvel Legends. Just really beautiful paintwork, really nice detail. Look at the wash in the sculpt work in the hair, the sort of eye makeup, the lips. I just think she's really great. As simple as she is, she looks immaculate. Raven looks good too. Raven actually looks really good for a McFarlane, but you can see the head sculpt's not as good. See, the paint's a bit blotchier, a bit less detailed, just not quite as good. The other thing I would tell you though, is that if you put the paintwork aside, what emerges again is that McFarlane has emphasized sculpt over paint. So you look and see that Marvel Legends has sort of very, very clearly and deliberately opted to go smooth, no texture to speak of. It just looks like spandex. And that's, I think, sort of the design. McFarlane, even for this sort of very basic figure, has given a texture to Raven. So you see her cape and cloak have a fabric texture to them. Her legs, her arms, everything is textured. So even though at a distance she appears quite classic and plain, there is actually a lot of sculpted detail in there. And I think that goes a long, long way to bringing these figures to life and giving them sort of a reality. And again, that is, it's a preference based on subjective priorities. Some people just really love this, you know, very classic look, and so do I. But I do think there's something to be said for that little bit of extra texture that McFarlane gives his figures. It makes them pop, in my opinion. Another thing to note in terms of the feel of these figures, Marvel Legends, and this one in particular, I don't know if it's just this buck, but the plastic is so soft. Look at the way her leg buckles. If I bend this too hard at the knee, like, it just feels like it's going to break. There is a gumminess, a gooiness to the plastic that just does not feel expensive. If I compare it to this Raven, you know, there is no flex. This is a hard, firm piece of plastic. It's not going to break. It's just not going to break. Whereas I really feel like I could just pull the pins out of that joint if I push too hard. So in terms of the quality and the sort of feel, I think Raven and McFarlane take it hands down, particularly in this comparison. Scarlet Witch just feels cheaper, lesser quality plastic, and that's just the way I feel about it. In terms of accessories, Raven came with 2 of these little flame effects and obviously a Beast Boy Build-A-Figure piece, well, I won't include that. Scarlet Witch comes with, you know, these little energy effects here. I don't really know, you know, how great these are. They look good on her, I guess, but they're nothing special. It's a dead heat, you know. Raven does come with a display stand and collector's card. It's probably dead even, in my opinion. I will say that this flame piece here, I've had to position in her hand so it looks better, but what you're actually meant to do is plug that flame piece right into the wrist joint, which just looks ridiculous, so I haven't done it. You know, I think the accessories are really, really similar. I just think you get like a more premium, bigger, better looking, better feeling figure for your money than you do in this case, and it's roughly the same amount of money. So, you know, be that as it may. So look, yeah, this round, definitely Raven and McFarlane. Anyway, that concludes my look at some of the figures from both these lines. Bit of a fun comparison, very non-scientific. Oh look, I'll add Sabretooth there because I feel sorry for him being left out. I think overall, my first impression of the Marvel Legends line is that they have some really, really cool designs. I really value the way they prioritize articulation and sort of the way they embrace the cartoony nature of these figures. Like, you know, Sabretooth we haven't looked at in detail yet, but I just love how classic and cartoony he is. It strikes a really good balance between realism and sort of articulation. I quite like it. But I think where the Marvel Legends is let down is they just don't feel as good in hand. They feel lighter, cheaper, less premium. And then, you know, by comparison, the DC Multiverse figures, you know, those three just feel, and I think this is true of the line as a whole, they feel like they emphasize the sculpt more. They're bigger in general. So in my opinion, for someone who just displays their figures, I think Multiverse is the better line, honestly. I just think they look better on display. They're bigger, they're more detailed. They're less posable, sure. And when you do pick them up though, I think they feel heavier, more premium, and just sort of, you get what you pay for. I think the value proposition is better, despite the often lacking accessories. So, you know, overall, no one's going to shift me from being a DC Multiverse focused collector. I will still collect my full Brotherhood of Mutants and X-Men range, but I can't see myself venturing beyond that in terms of Marvel Legends. There are just too many figures, too many reuses of body bucks, yeah, I just don't think you get the bang for your buck that you get from DC Multiverse. So it's been a really interesting experience for me. Anyway, what I want to do now is talk about a competition that we're going to run on the channel now to celebrate reaching 1,000 subscribers. So the competition is this. I would like you to leave me a comment below describing to me your perfect, ideal DC Multiverse Build-A-Figure wave. So I want you to pitch me on what 4 figures you would include in the wave and what would the Build-A-Figure be. So leave a comment below on this video. You have to be a subscriber. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Leave the comment at the end of August this month. So 31st August 2023. I will take the best comment, my favorite, most imaginative, creative response, and the winner will receive a $100 gift card to Fett's Hideout Toys and Collectibles. This is open to international subscribers as well. Fett's does really great international postage, really beautiful packaging and packing. He takes a lot of care when doing it. So international subscribers, please enter this competition. Win yourself a $100 Australian gift card to Fett's Hideout Toys and Collectibles. It's got a great range of HASBRO, McFARLANE, lots of other figures to choose from as well. So I highly recommend you enter this comp. Subscribe if you haven't. And at the end of August, we'll see who takes home the $100 gift card. Until then, I'll see you next time. This video was brought to you with the support of Fett's Hideout Toys and Collectibles. For a great range of toys from DC Multiverse to Black Series to Marvel Legends, Hot Toys and more, visit Fett's Hideout Toys and Collectibles and use the offer code DCDUDE. That's DCDUDE for an exclusive discount month to month. Could be 5% off or $5 off at checkout. Try the code, see what you get, place an order with Fett's, and you won't be disappointed. And we thank Fett's for their continued support of this channel.